He sells the mercury separators, the Boss, is that right? The Liberty Boss?
Thank you.
Okay.
The Liberty Boss.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I said it correctly. And Mike is going to explain to us why most of the separators that are in dental offices are not to code. And so it's really important meeting. Oh, Teresa, I want what you have. It's a really important meeting for us to have up on Zoom. And so I appreciate you being here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself because I can't.
Oh, that's the first time that's happened. Oh, thank you. All right, well, what I've brought up here is one sign for my booths at trade shows, because I got tired of hearing simply, oh, I have one. But as I say, I know you have one, but did you know 90% of separators will not meet the POTW discharge limits? It all comes down to percentage versus power, or PPT, which is parts per trillion. Now, here's the interesting facts, and this is actually sad. There are three companies in the world that can certify amalgam separators: Sweden, Germany, and there's another one in the USA, which is the problem, because in Sweden they have a ban on import and exports of mercury, so they can't actually get the samples. The reason they can't get the samples is that the samples are made in, the sample company is in Germany, which makes Germany look really good, except for the fact that the German company that grinds the samples can't import the mercury. The USA does not have a ban, so they can basically get it from anywhere that sells it. And there are very few people selling it, because the companies that sell it are in companies that are also having export. Geez, that looks really good. The ice cream. And it was the US guys end up having to spend a lot of time trying to get a sample, and then they grind it themselves because it's not easy to get. And historically, I've actually dealt with the third company, which is NSF in the States. It's up in Michigan. And let's put it this way, they didn't get a passing grade. So virtually, as far as I'm concerned, there is no place on the planet to get a certification for separators using ISO 11143. And it's understandable that ISO can only test up to 99.9%, which all by itself is not a big problem, except that leaves 0.01%. At 99.9, you still have to figure out what 0.01% discharge into the environment is. And that is 1 million nanograms per liter, which is, you know, people say, well, it's not a lot, it's parts per trillion. However, if you want to take a look at it, the limit for the Clean Water Act is 12. And that's for discharges into the US inland water system. The discharge into the Great Lakes is 1.3. We're a little far off of the 1 million mark there. This is where it gets complicated. The ISO protocol for certified amalgam separators does not measure soluble mercury. Although we disagree with the ADA for obvious reasons, who say that it's only 0.04% is soluble. Our tests have shown, and I've got the proof here, will show you that we actually generate between 30 and 70% of the mercury coming from the dental office is soluble. Why is that a problem? Oops. The problem is that the PTO or POTWs do not have a system to remove soluble mercury. Therefore, it goes straight through the system being untouched. That's the #1 problem. The #1A problem is phosphates, which is why we have the limit on the pH levels in line cleaners, because phosphates create algae clouds in the lakes, which is also not good. It generally does as much harm, if not more, than the mercury. The reason these are important is that when we started the Great Lakes incentive, or initiative rather, to limit the amount of mercury going into the lakes, everybody was, it's a lot of water, you're going to filter that out, it's not likely going to happen. However, over the past decade, we have found that Lake Erie is now, you can actually eat the fish every day, all day, which is completely different from anything we've seen over the past 15, 20 years. So when I say that, that's general proof that limiting mercury into a waterway will end up, it'll clean itself eventually. The phosphates are just going to have to take care of themselves. The EPA requires that the POTWs, which is public or private owned treatment plants, test the water according to EPA standards. The standard right now, well, it started off as 245.1. It's gone all the way now to 245.7 and 1631. That depends, they choose one based on how much mercury is expected to be found. Because if you find too much, it clogs up the computer system, and it's quite a mess to clean up. However, all of these EPA protocols that they demand that POTWs use are measured in nanograms per liter. That's parts per trillion. They all include, every one of them includes testing for soluble mercury, which is where, at this point, I should say that I feel sorry for the dentists, because the EPA has thrown one hell of a wrench into this system. They could have come out and said, hi, we tested in parts per trillion. This is a limit for parts per trillion, but they didn't. They said, and mostly because of the the ADA influence in the discussions, they decided to make it complicated and go for ISO 11143, which has nothing to do at all with the limits for the POTWs. So what do we end up with? And it's not that they didn't know, because in 2012, and I was lucky to be part of one of those, the ADA tested 12 amalgam separators according to ISO 11143. The only thing that I found important about that entire report was, apart from the fact that I got the report with the real numbers, and most of the people got the report with just pass or fail. And the guys that didn't make it, you would be really surprised. One of them is actually the highest or the best known separator around. However, the important thing is, the line that really stands out was that the additional research is needed to develop test methods to evaluate the efficiency of amalgam separators in removing small amalgam particles, colloidal amalgam particles, and ionic mercury in solution. They knew back then that they did a test, but they didn't actually do those tests because good old EPA came in and wrote it for them with their help. So this is, last week I made contact with some people I know at the EPA, and I asked them, I said, listen, it's very confusing. The doctors are gonna drive themselves crazy trying to figure out if they go with ISO 11143 or EPA 245.7. And this was their answer. Can everybody read that? Can you see the corners? It said, based on the promulgated law, the current ISO standard for amalgam separators is ISO 11143. In order to meet this standard, the separators must achieve 95% removal or higher. Most federal, from the Federal Register, reported removal efficiencies of a range of amalgam separators currently on the market meet the ISO standard. Separators obtain a median 99% removal efficiency. She was referring back to my comments about what general dentists were referring to. The rule in no way indicates that testing of mercury should be done via an ISO standard, and all samples taken, if any, should be sampled according to EPA approved methods. Well, you go on one hand and you tell them, oh, get yourself an ISO 11143 and do 99% and you're good. But when it comes to the test, if a water treatment plant or POTW decides to come in and test your water, they're going to be testing it at on the the EPA standard 245.7. Now 245.7 measures soluble mercury, and as you can see back here somewhere, 99.5% discharges a million. Well, you are never going to make that number 12 nanograms per liter if you're just saying I'm ISO 11143 certified, because the wastewater treatment plant will say, as they have in Ohio, thank you very much for your consideration. Now change the separator. And that's happening right now. So we run into a problem, which I was desperately trying to get a hold of the EPA to discuss and to show them, but they sent me back a whole lot of stuff that didn't really mean anything. Now, again, I pushed the great dental misrepresentation, care of your local American Dental Association. In no way does this rule intend on minimizing the issue that would, what is this? The soluble mercury is likely coming from dental office, and the conclusion is that the majority of mercury discharged by dentists is particulate. Isn't that nicely? And less than 99.6%. That is, I think, I sent somebody and we were talking about it, and I said, you can't really put that much BS in one line. Anyways, this kind of shows you, these are tests that are actually done in the Northeast. The separator at the top, the office number 1, didn't even have a separator, and they were lower than a lot of the DRNAs and the other systems that are on here, including the NXT, which is the HG5. But they do happen sometimes. This is a removable amalgam only, so he doesn't place amalgam, which is why his number is down at 4,300. 12,000, they couldn't expect. It's a DRNA. It's very hard to inspect that one. This one has no separator. These are normal numbers, 180,000 nanograms per liter. Where is this anywhere near getting close to passing, doing an ISO test? These are what the real tests are. This is telling you exactly what's going on out there. 10,900 is very close to the 10,000 limit in Ohio, but we always end up with these are actually kind of close to the normal numbers that I've seen in the past. 1.2 million, 1.05 million. This is a low one, 168,000. As you can see, 204,000, it's an NXT on bypass. But then again, they're only removing amalgams. Why is that important? Because the EPA, in their wisdom, and it was a smart thing to do, can transfer all the power to test and inspect and do all of the menial stuff that they have to do to make regulations like this work to the water treatment plant. Now, the water treatment plant is sitting back there and saying, well, according to the regulations, I need to discharge less than 1.3 if it's Great Lakes, or 12 if it's an inland waterway. So they have to come up with numbers to sit back and say, well, let's do that. They have also been given significant authority, discretionary authority, to do what they have to do to get that problems or get those numbers down. It's the same thing that the water treatment plants did with people like plating industry, some of the hospitals, even residential. They reduced the mercury by setting a limit, waiting till somebody meets it, and then setting a lower one, which is what I'm anticipating right now. The issue is that they do have this little regulation or something called a significant industrial user. You can either be, your classification is just an industrial user, but you can be converted at will to a CI or a CIU, categorical industrial user, or again, the SIU, a significant industrial user. Now, there's 3 requirements for that, and you only have to meet one. Nobody there is discharging 25,000 gallons per day, I hope. And nobody is contributing processed waste stream that makes up 5% of the capacity of a water treatment plant, because the smaller ones are like 2 million gallons a day. That's not you. However, 3 has a reasonable potential in the opinion of the control or approval authority to adversely affect the POTW treatment plant. And the methods are inhibition, pass-through pollutants, bingo, sludge contamination, bingo number 2, endangerment to POTW workers can be applied as well. So you're 3 out of the 4 as a general practitioner. The CIUs are, generally they run the same standards, but a CIU is an SIU, but an SIU is not always a CIU. Yep, that's one of those. The federal, not the federal government, but the state and local governments development are required, more restrictive. If they come back into your plant or your office and you're, shall we say, obstinate or not willing to move or not willing to make the changes they recommend or not willing to be tested further, they can easily change you into a CIU or an SIU. The paperwork will drown you, period. They will get you by beating you into submission with paper. So that's where, when you look at this whole thing, I talk to dentists, obviously, a lot. I talk to them or try to talk to them about the differences here, but there is a force behind them that says, or a force behind this law that nobody seems to recognize, is that what the EPA said is, the only thing the EPA said that was actually important was that they transfer authority to the water treatment plants. Now the water treatment plants have limits set. Let's see, Ohio's 10,000. Michigan's been rumored to be going lower than that. I think New York is up in the 5,000 or 10,000 too, but they have now got the right to force you to discharge a certain amount. They write it down. I know that in Ohio, they can actually get a little bit ornery, if you want to put it that way. One dentist said he wasn't going to do it, and the inspector suggested that he find a new state, and he wasn't kidding. It's exactly that. That's the kind of power that they have actually been given by the EPA, and that's not fair to dentists because they forgot to tell you guys. So now you're stuck with this, and I'm only here to warn people that this is, actually it's not coming, it's already here. I've seen many times in many places in Northeast where it's like, I could barely believe what they were doing. They asked one doctor to spend $40,000 to change plumbing, and he did it. Unfortunately for him, it didn't change anything. And then they put it in the boss and he passed. But the problems that we are facing within the dental industry is that certain associations seem to have a vested interest in not actually putting in separators. I've been fighting the ADA for, well, I don't know, before I knew Don, 15 years. I remember meeting them in Pittsburgh, no, not Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and at the city council, and we fought pretty hard. They were coming in with everything, all the standard stuff. Oh, it's been around for 150 years, so it's great. It's the most reliable product around. But I keep telling dentists, I don't care what you put in. I care what happens to it when you take it out. And when you take it out, it's destroying the environment. So we have to do something about it. I spent some time last November at the United Nations, because M.A.R.S was invited to speak to 128 countries. And in those discussions, I found out that they're just diplomats. They turn around and I asked one diplomat from Africa, I said, don't you ever want to solve this problem? I said, because, you know, there's a solution. You can do this. And he said, well, no, our solution is we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting in 2 years. There has to be some sort of worldwide consensus that says, hey, we've got to take this out. There are weird things happening in the environment because of mercury. I've seen them. There are a lot of things that should be used. And right now, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is going to be very interesting because we do have a bright future. We've introduced TMAC, Total Mercury Amalgam Capture and Containment. Now, what TMAC is a breakdown of what happens to and goes into, shall we say, the evacuation lines. And it's three-part system. We need a microfilter in the chairside trap to capture all the solids that come out. Now, the filter that we've made captures about 97% of the solids at the chair. Now, that means nothing until you add it in with everything else. This is not an amalgam separator, but what it is it removes a lot of the solids. They're going to get trapped in your lines. Those trapped in the lines, those are also mercury gets caught in that biofilm. And of course, that biofilm moves down to the separator, which clogs that. And that's been a big problem all the way along for the past 20 years with amalgam separators, is you get a whole lot of biofilm and they're releasing, all of a sudden your filter's clogged up. But they didn't have a solution. Now they have a solution. It won't remove, or it will not reduce the discharge from certain amalgam separators enough to make them pass, but it will discharge enough to at least make the water treatment plants a little happier, and see what happens next. The other solution here is the solution. Line cleaner is probably one of the most important things that you have in your office. We chose, we wanted a quality one. I spent 8 or so years working with BioPure and testing it. I finally found it that this is also a M.A.R.S product. We call it Clean Lines. And it dissolves prophy paste quite nicely, actually. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that the line is clean. And if the line is clean, and of course there are limits onto pH that's required. These are all neutral pH that reduce the level of mercury in the evacuation system or the pipe itself. And then we go to the Liberty Boss. Now, the Liberty Boss all by itself will discharge, and we only count discharges because the inlet, I don't care about. I only care what leaves the separator. And what leaves the separator in this case, in the normal case, without a filter and without the use of Clean Lines or BioPure, is about 60,000 nanograms per liter. And that is compared to most other separators that are discharging 1.2, 7.5, 10 million for a DRNA. But when you add the two things that I just talked about, our discharge limit drops down to, actually that, not 288 is not the right one, it's actually 264, up to 409 nanograms per liter. I have been to Europe. I've seen the European filter separators. They're usually cyclone filters. There's a Dur and there's the Katana, and their discharges are disgusting. I saw one, but I think it was probably on it had to be on overflow because discharge was 88 million nanograms per liter. So I think we're okay here. In these numbers, there's nobody in the continental United States that will require a number past that. So we're pretty, or lower than that rather. So we're pretty safe. We feel good about it. Now it's my turn to do a little bit of commercial. This is the BOSS. The BOSS is a closed system. It's designed to be sealed for life. The service component is reduced to 1 to 3 years, depending on how many chairs you have. So if you have 3 chairs or less, it'll last you 3 years. The reason I know that is because we measured how much media it would take to remove the average amount of amalgam in a dental wastewater, and these are the numbers we came up with. Just for passing, in 15 years, they've never led me astray. 2 years, that's 4 to 9 chairs, and 1 year is 10 plus. We're the only separator that can go over 10. Everybody else has to start doubling up. And we can go to 16 if we have to. Now, the delivery loss is not used up until the media is absorbed enough mercury. That's why we can tell a doctor exactly how much time he has with it and when your service life is up. Either 3 years. By the way, this number, this number here, the 268 or the 499, this was in the dental office and it was measured monthly for 3 years. It was a single separator. After 3 years, we didn't start building up because we were still taking them out. It was actually probably one of the most impressive numbers I've ever seen in dentistry. Simply because, after most separators, when they start getting filled up a little bit, you get more discharge. But the BOSS kept on running. It was a very proud moment. I was like a proud father, so to say. One of the advantages, if you have something that tells you exactly when it's due, reduces your need to fill out POTW forms. There's going to be forms out there that come with every time a POTW decides to look into dentistry. They'll send out a form, how many chairs you have, how many doctors, how many hygienists, how many. I know what all it says because I send the damn thing to them. It was our form that we got from the city of Toronto. Of course, because it's a sealed unit and a closed system, there are no filters to change. If anybody's ever changed an HT5 filter, I bet you that was probably the last one you did, because they're horrible. Now, it requires a large media bed, and we've measured it out. Our media bed is up in the 2-pound range, and that's because you need all that to get the amount of mercury that's in there. Now, the other thing is we guarantee it. So these 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3 years, is guaranteed by myself. And if it does not meet compliance, or if the POTW has any problems, we will get the number from you and call the POTW. We will deal with it. You do not have to. There's no reason that if I put it in, I shouldn't guarantee it. And there's no reason for you to have trouble with it if it doesn't work, which usually I find that the POTW hasn't got all the rules read yet, so they make a mistake. Yeah, so what I'm saying here is basically it's true value because it's peace of mind. You have other things to do. Leave the sludge to me. I understand it. You do dentistry, and I wouldn't dare take your chair. Don't take mine. I think that's the best attitude for it. We have done this for 15 years. We have thousands of separators out there. We consider ourselves the experts and the go-to people when it comes to having questions. I mean, I get questions from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, VA hospitals. It's basically what I want to look for. I actually had the Navy call me up. No, it wasn't the Navy. I'm sorry, it was Fort Pendleton. So it was the Marines. And they asked me to buy some of my media because it works so well. And I said, yes, sir, go for it. Anyways, that's the kind of thing that we do at M.A.R.S. We'd like to be fully flat out. I can't remember some things so that I don't lie, because I can't remember what I said. If I lied, I'll get caught in a minute. So we tell the truth here. We don't feel that the boss needs any help in marketing. There are a lot of people that I've often said, if I had one company's marketing budget and my product, nobody else would ever buy another separator on the planet. It'd be over. But there are a lot of people that stretch the truth. I feel that I've seen so much that people are talking to dentists, and I know they're telling them that their filters last a year, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world. It's my pet peeve is that how can you put in your marketing to say that the product will last a year or until it's full, whichever comes first? Excuse me, but I'm not going to sell you a car full of gas and tell you it'll last 10,000 miles or until it's full, or till it's empty rather. That doesn't make any sense to me, and I can't understand sometimes the marketing gets so hazy that how the heck anybody's supposed to understand it. What we do at M.A.R.S. is straight. We have one story. It's the only one. It's the truth, and that's what we do. And you look at this. You finally come to Don. Have I gone too fast?
No, but can I stop you for just a second?
Sure.
And recap. I need this dumbed down. There's a whole
Okay.
bunch of POWs in there and a bunch of stuff so basically a dental office is polluting the environment because they are putting in and or removing mercury fillings, and that's been proven. They contribute to a pollution in the water, which means that we can't eat fish. So
generally speaking, yes.
So governments came together and passed laws that are already in place now, making it mandatory that every dental office have a mercury separator to prevent polluting the environment. Got
Absolutely
it so far?
true.
Okay.
So far, so good. You're going to have to add one other thing, though. The government went in and gave the power to the water treatment plants to inspect and to do whatever they wish with the dental offices, but the EPA did nobody any favors because they were not clear about what they wanted. They were very vague, and they were using some information that wasn't quite where it's supposed to be.
So basically you could buy a separator that has no warranty, no guarantee, but carries the word separator.
Yes, and carries ISO 11143.
Yeah, that's the part that you lose me at. It's
right,
like speaking computer language to me.
Nah, come on. This is what I'm saying. Right up here, the ISO test can go to 99.9%. That means that there's 0.01% that's going to go past the separator. If it's really taken up that much, then it's only losing 0.01%. But when we calculated it, 0.01% is 1 million nanograms per liter. Nanograms is parts per trillion. So, and then
the dental industry has not been gigged until now for the pollution that we've contributed to the planet.
No, no, because we've got the same thing. Here's the bottom line that I spoke to at some stuff at the UN. You know, if you make a decision and you get a product and it's a great product and it works for years, but sometimes science develops a little bit and realizes that, hey, we made a mistake. It's a good product, but it has some nasty side effects. Then isn't it morally our responsibility to change it or do something about it? If nothing else, don't let it get into the environment, even if that's all you do.
So that I can, again, continue to dumb it down. There are separators out there that can be purchased where you have to have them serviced. We are supposed to have them serviced. And yet some offices trying to save money service them themselves, which defeats the entire point of having the mercury separator. Whereas the Liberty Boss does not have to be serviced.
I had two decisions to make when I started the company. One, do dentists want to put their hands in sludge? And the answer was no. And two, did they want to smell it and be upset with all this mess going on? No. Did they want to have something that is, you know, keep paying me? Like I bought a Bic razor, so now I got to pay $34 for the razor blades. No, they didn't want that either. So those things involved, it means that, so we have to give somebody, we designed a separator that was maintenance free and easy to do. So then that would make it easy for the dentist, but it'll get there. And you're right, the dentists have been, have had it pretty well easy because they've been ignored by the water treatment plants for a long time. Now, every other industry, the hospital, industrial area, and the residential area have been addressed, and all their limits are down. Oh, memory, come on. I believe the biggest one is still the hospital at 290 nanograms per liter. And that's because they kept lowering the bar until basically it got done. What they're doing now is that you guys are the last one. It's known that you contribute approximately 50% of the mercury burden to the treatment plant. So it's your turn.
Mike, you were talking about the sludge, and of course, you know, I was in wet finger dentistry many, many years ago, and as a hygienist, at the end of the day, we had to take our ADEC cart apart and clean out the little filter of all the prophy paste and the spit and everything. And we didn't wear gloves. I mean, we just got a toothbrush and scrubbed it all out and put it back in so that the lines wouldn't get clogged up, and then you poured water through the suction and everything. It's amazing that many of us my age are even alive. But one of the things that I wanted to comment on is this is essential for every dental office. We're not talking about something that's just for a biological dental office.
No, this is general dentistry as a whole, because it's being seen by the EPA and by the water treatment plants as one issue. And so it's not, you know, well, I don't place.
What is the cost?
You never get away with I can't place.
What is the cost of the Liberty Boss?
The cost of the Liberty Boss is $12.68. We've increased the price from $11.74. The reason for that is this is the first increase that M.A.R.S has had in 15 years. Actually, the only price change we've ever had in 2009, and I reduced the price by $300. But the cost of polyethylene has gone up 40% in the past 5 years. And I have, out of amalgam separator, about 12.5 pounds of low density polyethylene. So it's costing me, and I just had to.
And what does it cost to service over a year?
$0.
Okay. And
you know what the cost to service over 2 years? $0.
Okay, so what I hear is there's an initial investment and that's it.
That's right. What we do with the Liberty Boss, the whole program has been this. We will ship it to you. It'll cost you $12.68. That's all the money I want. That's it. When we put it in, or whenever a technician puts it in, that's so totally different. So you find your technician. Be careful, because if you deal with Sign or Benko or Patterson, they tend to want to sell the only separator that they really have, which is the HG5, which I obviously don't recommend.
Can just a regular plumber put it in?
Should be able to, and even at that, M.A.R.S is willing to. I get calls all the time that I give my cell phone number out, and I say, yeah, if a problem or a plumber has a problem or a question, have them call me. We just answer it. I've installed separators over the phone because it's really simple.
Put the slide up that shows the contact information for you, which is at the end. Nope.
Yep, right there. This is my office number, and that's my email. If you email me your phone number, I will be on the phone right back to you probably the same day if I'm in town. If not, I'll call you from my hotel room, because it's very, very simple. We've done it for thousands of separators, and it's very, very simple to do. I had a doctor, a nice lady, about 5'0" in Ohio, not Ohio, but Iowa. And she said, do you think I can install it? And I said, well, can you handle a wrench and a screwdriver? She said, sure, I could. She called me back 2 weeks later, said, Mike, that was so easy. I was thrilled for her, but that's the case. If you can't, if you're—
The Liberty Boss is the only separator that's actually endorsed by the IABDM, which is us, amazingly. I'm sure you're going to give our members a special arrangement.
Absolutely. Of course we do. Don, I don't think I'd ever live through the next meeting if I didn't, so you might as well. I'd have to say that right now, we will— listen, I'll go out. I'm going to write it down so I don't make a mistake. I would say that if anybody from the IABDM or buys a separator from M.A.R.S, we will give it to them at the old price of $11.74 and not the $12.68.
Okay, and
that will be the same thing in case, for instance, sometimes with trade shows, we give out a box of line cleaner. If that happens at a trade show, the IABDM still gets $11.74 and the line cleaner. So whatever we're giving to anybody else, we're giving it to you, but we're giving it to you at $11.74 instead of $12.68.
Okay, and there was a question that was typed in. It says, and let's make sure that I answer this correctly. Are there any filters that need to be changed? And the answer is no.
You're absolutely right. No, we do not change filters. This is a sealed system for two very good reasons. First of all, we're protecting your staff from changing those filters. And two, we're protecting the technicians that come in from changing those filters. And because I've changed one, I know they leak. When you take that filter off the bottom, some of the stuff that's up in the upper chamber will flow down, which means you have a terrible smell and a leak on your floor. Neither of which are any good, believe me, because it will smell like heck.
But why would you have to change one if the Liberty Boss doesn't require, if it's a closed system, it doesn't require change?
The other people. Mine,
okay.
Mine you don't.
Okay, I want to make that clear.
With the inlet coming in from the top, there's a settling chamber on that side, and that's covered with water, which eliminates a lot of that fumes or any toxic waste getting out. Then it goes over through the media and out through the separator. So on the other side is the media. So the air or water coming back, it doesn't go uphill, but even at that, it's protected with the media, so it can't climb through the media. So you're not smelling any better going to the in and the out, but there's no danger.
Okay. Does anybody else have any? Oh, here's one that It says the EPA governs US. What regulations are there for Canada?
Oh, God. It's kind of embarrassing. We have set a national standard at 95, and basically it's up to the water, or not the water treatment plants, that they can make suggestions, and they accept everything because the law up here came in when there was, well, something's better than nothing attitude was around. Unfortunately, we're trying to break that because something is better than nothing. So,
Okay, flip back one slide for me, if you will,
sure.
so that I can reiterate this for you, that it reduces your need to fill out any forms. It has no expensive filters to change. You're going to stand by it.
Absolutely unconditional guarantee. I have on several times gotten calls from doctors who said, "Well, Mike, I think my sludge and the Patterson guy or the Henry Schein guy said he thinks your filter is clean, and that's 3 chairs after a year." And I'm going, "Well, it's not the separator, I guarantee you that." At which point I will normally say, "Listen, I'll come out and take a look, and I'll bring a separator with me." But if it's not mine, you're like any other service call, you're going to pay for the service call. But
Yeah.
if it's anything to do with me, anything at all, I will, no charge, no problem whatsoever. I've actually sent out separators because the doctor thought it was, and the technician looked at it and says, "Mike, I think it's this." And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure it's not, but you send it back to me. In the meantime, I will send you a new one for free." I have no problem with doing that. It's customer service, and the doctors deserve that.
That's an amazing service, and that's why we stand behind you. So I want to thank you for the presentation. I want to see if we can stop the recording so that we can get it up online as quickly as possible. It'll be available